Welcome to More Than a Few Words Marketing Conversation. This is your host, Lorraine Ball. And every day, every single day, there's information coming at us. There's messages coming at us from our kids and our family to the advertisers and schools and our bosses. And quite honestly, it's a little bit of message overload. And so, as a marketer, how do you break through the clutter? How do you get people to pay attention to your message when you've got so much else going on around you? That's what we're going to talk about today. And to have this conversation, I've invited Orly Zeevy to join me. She's an author, a speaker, an educator, and a facilitator of those light bulb moments. Her superpower? She makes the fuzzy clear. Orly, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Lorraine. It's a pleasure.
It is such a pleasure. Okay. So when we were talking offline, we definitely connected on this topic of clarity because I think it is so important. Why do you think for marketers that that's the thing they got to get right?
So the thing about clarity is we have to define what it is first, right? So, what's clear for you is not necessarily what's clear for someone that you're speaking to. Now, if you're speaking as a marketer, you want to, the goal is to cut through the noise, not so people will buy what you're selling, but so they will remember you enough to then look for you or remember you when they hear you again. So there's two parts to the clarity. There's consistency, and then there's this cutting through the noise with messaging that actually lands. Right.
Yeah. Okay, so let's go back and let's break those two down. Let's start with consistency. When you talk about consistency of message, how do I deliver that?
Well, so I'm going to just focus on, entrepreneurs, small businesses, let's say. There's three areas where that has to happen. That's in your elevator pitch, that's on your LinkedIn profile, and that's on your homepage.
So there are three places where you're telling your story and you've got to be consistent. And so step number one, go ahead and check and make sure you're showing up the way you want to show up. And the second piece then was this making clarity in terms of making sure that you were communicating a message you said that was relevant to your audience.
Correct.
How do you do that?
Well, step number one, as marketers know, you have to understand who the audience is. Mm-hmm. So, and you have to also understand, as you said earlier, that we're each being a message, 24/7, tens of thousands of messages. And then there's the other piece, which is, of course, as we become more and more over message, our attention span has consistently gotten less and less.
That's such an important point because I think about my mother's generation. And when you watch a movie from that generation, and there are these wonderful long scenes that sometimes get a little tedious for me and are just painstaking for my daughter. She whips out that phone and she's like, "Is it over yet?" That whole, "I'm ready for my close-up, Mr. DeMille." No. Yeah, right. So finding that balance, finding a way to tell your story in a way that is relevant and rapid.
Well, yes, and. The problem that I think a lot of people run into, and marketers will recognize this, is when you ask somebody, and I always start with the elevator pitch. When you ask somebody what they do, they tell you what they do. They tell you how they do it. They go on and on and on and on. No one cares about any of that. So getting back to clarity, this is why you go back to understanding who you're speaking to. And you're not talking to the whole world. That's the other mistake that people make, is they think they have to somehow provide a generic answer that covers everything. And that does not work.
No, because everybody thinks it's kind of watered down. And, well, yeah, you say you do that, but do you really do it for me? And so I love the emphasis on getting right with who your audience is and using that in your elevator pitch. Stop talking about,
Right.
I write marketing copy, I design websites. And if I asked you what your elevator pitch is, what would you tell me?
Right. So I've spent a lot of time thinking about this, as you can imagine.
Absolutely.
And the answer to that really is, I turn fuzzy content into clear marketing messages that help you cut through the noise so you can attract your ideal clients.
So, in that really 1 minute, um,
Try 15 seconds.
yes, okay, so in those 15 seconds, you have told me what you do, clear messaging, cut through the noise, and you finished with the thing that's really relevant to me as a business owner, which is make more sales. You know, and I think that's the thing that as people are trying to clarify their messaging, that they leave out is, well, I, I design websites. Uh-huh. Why? Why do you do it? Why is that important for businesses? So is there an exercise that you take business owners and marketers through that helps them get more clarity in their messaging?
You know what? I have literally distilled this to three things: get clear on who you are, who needs it, and what they get.
Cool. And all right, so I'm going to push back because that's kind of general. I mean, it's all good information and absolutely that's the outline. How do you get clear on who you are? How do you, beyond the buzzwords of getting clear, how do you do it?
So you start with what's your zone of genius. And if you're not clear about that, nothing else matters. Like that's where, so when I work with clients, the first thing we talk about is what is your zone of genius? I hear this a lot, especially from women, because I do work with a lot of women entrepreneurs, is that they think because it comes easily to them that somehow it doesn't have value. So then the next step is you need to connect this your superpower, for me, as I said, making fuzzy clear, but you need to connect it to something that's relevant for your ideal client. So when I say who you are and who needs it, what I mean is once you understand your zone of genius and you're crystal clear on the value that you provide, now you need to think about who actually needs it.
And I used to do a lot of networking. You probably did when you first started your business, and you'd meet the Mary Kay lady who said, well, anybody with skin needs my product. No, no, actually, they don't. And hello, Mr. Chiropractor, not everybody with a spine really needs you or wants you. So, how do you define those people most likely to buy? Because that's really what you're trying to connect to, is not just every small business owner or every marketer, but a specific group. How do you get to that?
Well, so again, the focus is this is sometimes I also start with, well, who is that person? Because you don't want to work with everybody. And even if let's say everyone needed what you do not have the marketing budget to go market this to the entire world. So, I always come back to that, like, do you have $100,000 a year to spend on marketing? Because that's what it's going to take you if you're going to talk to everybody. But yeah, I think it's when you figure out who that person is, you figure out the key thing, not everything that's a problem for them, but the key thing that's also aligned with what you offer. So because if you don't do that, and you know this, Lorraine, you end up being a solution looking for a problem.
Yes, I love that phrase because it is so descriptive. I've seen so many people running around networking events with hammers looking for a nail. And
right, and when you're a hammer, everything's a nail, right?
everything's a nail. Yeah, whether you need a screw or an eye hook, you're thinking that if I just get the right nail, it's all going to work. Well, I could talk marketing and I could talk clarity forever because this is an issue that is near and dear to my heart. But we're going to put a pin in it here. And I'm going to suggest that if you're curious about some of the things that Orly has done and is doing, you definitely want to head over to Zeewy Brands. That is ZeeWybrands.com. There you will find information on her free clarity sessions, other resources, including a book that she is working on. So if you hop over in the first quarter of 26, you're going to find that as well. Orly, thank you for being a part of the show.
Thank you so much, Lorraine. It was a pleasure speaking with you.
This was a lot of fun. Thank you. And if you've enjoyed this conversation, share it with a friend. Be sure to look for others wherever you listen to podcasts and subscribe so you don't miss another 10 minutes of brilliance. This has been another episode of More Than a Few Words. Thanks for listening.